Before leaving, Bryn begged Kaya not to destroy the family. Tears rolled down her face as she claimed parents make mistakes and said Kaya owed them forgiveness after everything they had done for her growing up. Nolan stayed silent in the corner, refusing to meet Kaya's eyes, knowing the truth could no longer be hidden. But this time, Kaya finally saw through the guilt and manipulation that had controlled her for years. Her voice trembled as she told them parents are supposed to protect their children's dreams, not chain them down out of fear and selfishness. She reminded them how she sacrificed her youth, relationships, and happiness just to keep them comfortable while they secretly used her love as a paycheck. Bryn tried one last time to stop her, crying that families should stay together no matter what. But Kaya realized staying would only destroy her completely. Without another word, she picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door with Reese beside her. Her mother sobbed in the doorway while her father stared silently at the floor, too ashamed to look at the daughter they betrayed. As Kaya stepped outside into the cold evening air, she understood something painful but freeing. Sometimes the hardest goodbye is the one that finally saves your life. Growing up, Kaya Mercer quickly learned there were different rules inside the Mercer household. Her younger brother, Zeke, was treated like the golden child no matter how badly he behaved, while Kaya carried the responsibility for everyone else's mistakes. If Zeke crashed a car, Kaya was expected to help pay for repairs. If he failed classes or quit another job, Nolan and Bryn always defended him by saying he was just finding himself. Meanwhile, Kaya worked non-stop from the time she was 16. She balanced school, part-time jobs, and eventually nursing school without asking her parents for help. But instead of being proud of her independence, her parents constantly reminded her that she owed them for all the sacrifices they made raising her. Every achievement in Kaya's life somehow became another reason she should give more back to the family. Even after becoming successful as a trauma nurse in Seattle, the pressure never stopped. Nolan called her the stable one, while Bryn used guilt to convince Kaya that good daughters take care of their parents no matter what. So when they claimed retirement was harder than expected and medical bills were piling up, Kaya immediately stepped in. She began sending them $2,000 every month, believing she was helping them survive peacefully. What Kaya didn't know was that most of that money never went toward bills or medical care at all. Behind her back, Nolan and Bryn were secretly using her sacrifices to fund Zeke's reckless lifestyle, expensive apartments, gambling debts, luxury trips, and endless second chances he never deserved. A few months before the wedding, Kaya and her fiancé, Reese Calloway, decided on a small coastal ceremony in Oregon. They wanted something peaceful and intimate, a quiet cliffside venue overlooking the ocean with close friends, warm lights, and soft music. After years of stressful hospital shifts and family pressure, Kaya dreamed of one beautiful day that finally felt happy. But almost immediately, the wedding became another source of tension. Reese noticed Kaya constantly cutting corners on her own budget. She chose cheaper flowers, canceled the honeymoon suite, and even considered buying a second-hand wedding dress, all because she refused to stop sending $2,000 every month to her parents. Every time Reese gently suggested lowering the payments, Kaya defended Nolan and Bryn, insisting they needed her help to survive. Meanwhile, Bryn criticized nearly every decision Kaya made. She mocked the coastal venue for being too simple, complained Kaya's dress looked cheap, and constantly compared the wedding to lavish ceremonies hosted by other families. Nothing Kaya chose was ever good enough. Nolan added more pressure by demanding Kaya invite distant relatives she barely remembered, claiming it would embarrass the family if they were excluded. Instead of enjoying her engagement, Kaya spent most nights emotionally exhausted and overwhelmed. Reese tried comforting her, but he could see the pain she kept hiding behind fake smiles. Deep down, Kaya kept telling herself all the stress would be worth it if her parents finally showed genuine love and appreciation on her wedding day. More than the perfect dress or venue, that was all she truly wanted. One rainy evening, Kaya stopped by her parents' house after finishing a brutal 12-hour hospital shift. She planned to drop off groceries and quickly head home to continue working on wedding invitations with Reese. As she walked toward the kitchen, she heard Bryn laughing on the phone in the next room. At first, Kaya wasn't paying attention until she heard her own name. Bryn casually told Zeke that another payment cleared this morning and joked about how easy it was to keep Kaya sending money every month. Then she laughed even harder when Zeke said Kaya would probably keep paying forever because she was too soft to say no. Kaya froze in the hallway. Her stomach tightened as confusion and panic rushed through her chest. For a moment, she wondered if she misunderstood the conversation or took the comments out of context. She wanted to believe there had to be another explanation because accepting the truth felt unbearable. When she got back home that night, Reese immediately noticed something was wrong. After hearing what happened, he gently encouraged Kaya to look deeper into her parents' finances and question where the money was really going. But Kaya refused. The idea terrified her. If her suspicions were true, it would destroy the image of family she had spent her entire life protecting. Instead of confronting the situation, Kaya buried herself in wedding planning. She obsessed over seating charts, flower arrangements, and guest lists, hoping distractions would silence the growing fear in her mind. But no matter how hard she tried, Bryn's laughter kept replaying in her head. For the first time in her life, Kaya started wondering if her parents had never truly needed saving at all. The night before the wedding, Kaya tried convincing herself everything would finally settle down. The rehearsal dinner was held at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Oregon coastline, filled with warm lights, ocean air, and close friends who genuinely cared about her. For a few brief moments, Kaya almost felt happy. Then Zeke arrived. He stumbled into the restaurant nearly 40 minutes late, already drunk and loud enough to turn heads the second he walked in. What caught Kaya's attention immediately was the expensive designer suit he was wearing, a suit she knew he could never afford on his own. The realization hit her like ice water. Somewhere deep down, she already knew whose money had paid for it. As dinner continued, Zeke grew more obnoxious with every drink. He mocked Reese for working a boring office job and joked that Kaya probably made more money than her future husband anyway. Guests laughed awkwardly while Reese tried staying calm for Kaya's sake. But then Zeke smirked, raised his glass, and loudly called Kaya the Mercer family ATM. The table went silent. Kaya felt heat rush into her face as humiliation tightened her chest. She waited for Nolan or Bryn to defend her, to finally tell Zeke he had gone too far. Instead, both of them laughed along with him like it was harmless family humor. Bryn even muttered that Kaya had always been generous. That moment broke something inside her. Kaya forced herself to smile through the rest of dinner because she refused to let the weekend collapse before the wedding even happened. But later that night, alone with Reese in their hotel room, the tears finally came. She admitted how exhausted she felt trying to earn love from people who only seemed to value what she could give them financially. Reese held her hand and quietly told her something nobody in her family ever had: "You deserve better than this." And for the first time in her life, Kaya started believing it might actually be true. The morning of Kaya's wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Sunlight poured through the windows of the coastal venue while bridesmaids rushed around preparing hair, makeup, and final decorations. For a brief moment, Kaya tried convincing herself the tension with her family could be forgotten for one day. Then everything fell apart. Less than 3 hours before the ceremony, the wedding coordinator rushed into the bridal suite looking panicked. The florist had never been paid. There were no flower arrangements coming, no ceremony arch, no reception centerpieces, nothing. Kaya stared at her in confusion because she had personally transferred thousands of dollars to Nolan weeks earlier after he insisted he could handle the florist cheaper through a friend. Her hands started shaking as she repeatedly called both of her parents. Neither answered. While trying to figure out where the money went, Kaya overheard one of Zeke's friends bragging downstairs about Zeke's brand new luxury apartment in Denver. Confused, Kaya questioned him further until the truth spilled out casually: Nolan had recently helped Zeke make the down payment using family money. Family money. Kaya felt the room spin around her as the pieces finally connected. The monthly support payments she sacrificed years of her life to provide were never about helping struggling parents. Nolan and Bryn had been secretly funneling her money into Zeke's reckless lifestyle the entire time. Expensive apartments, gambling debts, designer clothes, Kaya had unknowingly paid for all of it. Inside the bridal suite, Kaya completely broke down. Tears ruined her makeup as years of manipulation crashed over her at once. Every overtime shift, every cancelled vacation, every dream she postponed suddenly felt meaningless. The people she trusted most had treated her love like an endless bank account. Reese found her sitting on the floor still wearing her half-finished wedding dress, unable to stop crying. When she finally looked up at him, her voice cracked with devastation as she whispered the truth she had been avoiding for years. My entire relationship with my parents was built on manipulation. Despite everything that happened that morning, Kaya somehow pulled herself together and walked down the aisle. She told herself she wouldn't let her parents ruin the wedding completely. The ceremony itself was beautiful. The ocean waves crashed softly behind them as Reese held her hands like he was trying to keep her from falling apart. For a little while, Kaya almost believed the worst was over. But the reception destroyed that hope. As guests settled into their seats for dinner, Nolan stood to give his father of the bride speech. Kaya waited nervously, hoping this would finally be the moment her father showed even a little love or appreciation for her. Instead, Nolan spent most of the speech praising Zeke. He called him the son every father dreams of and joked about how charismatic and fearless he was growing up. Guests exchanged confused glances while Kaya sat frozen in disbelief. Nolan barely mentioned Kaya at all beyond calling her helpful and reliable. It sounded less like a father honoring his daughter and more like a man bragging about his favorite child in front of everyone. The room grew painfully awkward. Then things got even worse. Already drunk again, Zeke grabbed a champagne glass and loudly laughed that Kaya shouldn't look upset because she had paid for half his life anyway. He smirked while several guests stared at him in shock. Then he casually mentioned the Denver apartment and expensive lifestyle Kaya had unknowingly funded for years. This time, nobody laughed. The reception hall went completely silent except for the sound of waves crashing outside. Kaya felt her chest tighten as years of betrayal were exposed in front of everyone she loved. Reese immediately stood beside her, placing his hand around hers while she struggled to breathe through the humiliation. Across the room, Bryn nervously tried laughing the situation off while Nolan barked at Zeke to sit down. But the panic on their faces revealed the truth louder than words ever could. The secret was finally out. And there was no fixing what came next. For a few seconds after Zeke's confession, Kaya couldn't hear anything except the pounding of her own heartbeat. Every guest in the reception hall stared at her with shock and pity while Nolan and Bryn desperately tried to calm the situation before it spiraled further. But something inside Kaya finally broke. Instead of sitting there silently like she always had, she slowly stood up and walked toward the microphone at the center of the room. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold it steady, but for the first time in years, she refused to stay quiet just to protect her family's image. Kaya looked around the room at everyone she loved and finally told the truth. She revealed how she had spent years sending her parents $2,000 every month because they claimed retirement and medical bills were destroying them financially. She admitted how she worked exhausting 16-hour trauma shifts, skipped vacations, postponed dreams, and sacrificed pieces of her own happiness because she believed she was helping her struggling parents survive peacefully. Then her voice cracked as she explained that Nolan and Bryn had secretly used her money to fund Zeke's reckless lifestyle instead: luxury apartments, designer clothes, gambling debts, and endless bailouts. Every painful sacrifice she made had been treated like an unlimited source of cash for the son they truly cared about. Guests sat in stunned silence while Bryn suddenly burst into tears, begging Kaya to stop talking. Nolan's face turned red with anger as he accused Kaya of destroying the family and embarrassing them publicly on her wedding day. But for once, Kaya didn't feel guilty anymore. She looked directly at her parents and calmly announced that the monthly payments were ending immediately. No more money. No more manipulation. No more sacrificing her life for people who only loved her conditionally. The room stayed silent for several long seconds before a few relatives quietly stood beside Kaya. Some guests looked disgusted by Nolan and Bryn's behavior, while others comforted Kaya as she fought back tears. For the first time in her life, Kaya stopped protecting the people who had spent years hurting her. And deep down, even through the heartbreak, she finally felt free. A week after the wedding, Kaya tried focusing on rebuilding her life with Reese. She told herself the worst was finally over. The reception humiliation had exposed the truth, the monthly payments were gone, and for the first time in years, she felt a small sense of peace. Then the phone calls started. At first, Kaya assumed they were spam. Unknown numbers called repeatedly during work, leaving cold voicemail messages about overdue balances and urgent payment demands. Confused, she finally answered one during her lunch break, only to hear a collection agency asking about thousands of dollars in unpaid credit card debt under her name. Kaya froze. She had never opened those accounts. She barely used credit cards at all. Panic set in as she checked her credit report later that night and uncovered something devastating. Multiple accounts had been opened years earlier using her personal information. The balances were massive, filled with luxury purchases, hotel charges, gambling withdrawals, and expensive expenses that looked painfully familiar. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Her parents had secretly opened credit cards using Kaya's identity to keep funding Zeke's reckless lifestyle whenever money ran low. While Kaya worked exhausting hospital shifts believing she was helping struggling parents survive, Nolan and Bryn had quietly buried her in debt behind her back. Shaking with anger and heartbreak, Kaya confronted Nolan immediately. But instead of apologizing or protecting her, he sounded irritated. He told her to handle it quietly because involving lawyers or police would embarrass the family and make Zeke's life harder. Bryn cried in the background, begging Kaya not to ruin everything over a mistake. That was the moment something inside Kaya finally changed forever. She realized her parents had never truly seen her as a daughter. To them, she was security, money, protection, someone whose future could be sacrificed whenever the family needed saving. A safety net, not a child. When Kaya broke down crying later that night, Reese sat beside her and gently told her what nobody else had ever said: "You don't have to survive this alone." For the first time, Kaya stopped protecting her parents. Together, she and Reese contacted a lawyer and began gathering evidence. If her family wanted to betray her, Kaya was finally ready to fight back. After years of protecting her family no matter how badly they treated her, Kaya finally stopped covering for them. With Reese beside her, she spent days gathering bank records, transfer receipts, credit reports, and every piece of evidence proving the financial fraud Nolan and Bryn had hidden for years. The deeper she looked, the worse the truth became. Thousands upon thousands of dollars had been drained from her while her parents lied directly to her face. Kaya's lawyer immediately helped freeze the fraudulent credit accounts and began filing legal complaints connected to identity theft and financial abuse. For the first time, Nolan and Bryn were forced to face real consequences instead of relying on Kaya to quietly clean up their mess. The effects hit the family fast. Without Kaya's monthly payments, Zeke could no longer afford the luxury apartment in Denver. Within weeks, eviction notices appeared on his door, and the expensive lifestyle he bragged about started collapsing around him. Friends who once surrounded him disappeared the second the money stopped flowing. Meanwhile, Nolan suddenly began calling Kaya nonstop. His voice no longer sounded proud or controlling, now he sounded desperate. He begged Kaya to forgive the family and claimed they could fix this privately. But Kaya quickly realized his panic had nothing to do with losing his daughter. Creditors were now demanding payments, investigations were beginning, and the safety net they depended on was finally gone. Bryn tried using emotional guilt one last time. She tearfully claimed the stress was making her health worse again and accused Kaya of tearing the family apart when they needed her most. Months earlier, those words would have destroyed Kaya emotionally. But now she saw the manipulation clearly. Every crisis, every illness, every emotional breakdown had always appeared whenever they feared losing control over her. For the first time in her life, Kaya chose herself instead of sacrificing everything for people who never protected her. And while it hurt deeply to accept the truth about her parents, it also gave her something she had never truly experienced before: freedom. As lawyers and investigators began uncovering the financial fraud connected to Kaya's accounts, the truth spread through the Mercer family faster than Nolan and Bryn could control it. Relatives who once admired them as loving parents slowly learned how deeply they had manipulated their own daughter for years. Conversations that used to praise Nolan and Bryn turned into whispers about stolen money, lies, and betrayal. For the first time, Kaya wasn't the family member being blamed for causing problems. People finally saw what she had endured in silence for most of her life. Several relatives quietly reached out to apologize for never noticing the pressure Kaya had been carrying alone. Others distanced themselves from Nolan and Bryn completely, unwilling to defend what they had done anymore. Meanwhile, Zeke's life collapsed almost overnight. Once the money stopped coming, so did the luxury lives. Lifestyle. Friends disappeared, bills piled up, and the Denver apartment he loved so much was gone. Instead of taking responsibility, Zeke blamed Nolan and Bryn for spoiling him and teaching him to depend on Kaya financially. Then, just like that, he vanished without warning, leaving his parents to deal with the consequences alone. Nolan became quieter as everything around him fell apart. During one final argument with Kaya, he admitted something that shattered the last piece of hope she still carried inside her. He confessed he truly believed Kaya would always keep paying no matter what. Not because they loved her. Not because they appreciated her sacrifices. But because they assumed she would never stop putting them first. Hearing those words destroyed whatever emotional connection Kaya still had left toward her parents. In that moment, she fully understood she had never been treated like a daughter, only a resource they expected to control forever. After that conversation, Kaya made the hardest decision of her life. She cut contact with Nolan and Bryn completely. No more calls. No more guilt. No more chances to manipulate her again. Instead, Kaya focused on rebuilding her life with Reese. Slowly, painfully, she began learning what life looked like when love wasn't tied to sacrifice and obligation. And even though losing her family hurt deeply, losing herself would have hurt far more. Months after the wedding chaos and painful separation from her family, Kaya finally allowed herself to breathe again. The legal battles were settling, the constant phone calls had stopped, and for the first time in years, her paycheck belonged to her own future instead of someone else's demands. Kaya and Reese finally took the honeymoon they had postponed for so long, a quiet trip along the coast of Maine filled with peaceful mornings, ocean air, and the kind of calm Kaya barely remembered existing. There were no emergency calls from her parents, no guilt-filled messages, and no pressure to sacrifice herself for people who only valued what she could provide. At first, spending money on herself felt strange. Kaya caught herself checking prices constantly and feeling guilty over small luxuries like spa reservations, expensive dinners, or booking a beautiful hotel room overlooking the water. But Reese gently reminded her that caring for herself wasn't selfish. It was normal. One evening, while sitting beside the ocean watching the sunset, Kaya quietly reflected on everything she had lost. She realized betrayal from strangers hurts, but betrayal from family cuts far deeper because it destroys trust at its roots. The people who were supposed to protect her had instead used her kindness, loyalty, and love as tools to control her. But despite all the pain, Kaya also understood something important: walking away had saved her future. If she had stayed trapped in the cycle of guilt and manipulation, she would have spent the rest of her life sacrificing herself for people who would never truly appreciate her. Nolan and Bryn didn't lose their daughter because Kaya became cruel. They lost her because they only valued her when she was giving them something. As Reese wrapped his arm around her shoulders, Kaya finally felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. And on the day her family tried hardest to break her, Kaya unknowingly took the first step toward becoming completely free. Do you think I made the right choice by finally walking away from my parents after everything they did, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe plus hit the notification bell for more emotional betrayal and revenge stories like mine.